In the heart of ancient Israel, where green valleys stretched under a vast, watchful sky, two armies stood poised for a battle that would echo through history. The air was thick with tension, a silence broken only by the nervous shuffle of soldiers' feet and the clatter of their armor. For 40 days, the Philistine army had taunted the Israelites, their challenge embodied by one colossal figure. His name was Goliath, a giant from Gath, standing over 9 feet tall, clad in bronze from head to toe. His armor weighed more than a man. Every morning and every evening, he would stride out into the valley, his voice booming like thunder, mocking the armies of Israel and their God. "Choose a man and let him come down to me. I will rule. If he is able to fight and kill me, we will become your subjects. But if I overcome him and kill him, you will become our subjects and serve us." Fear was a cold shadow that fell over the Israelite camp. King Saul and his soldiers, the bravest men in the land, were dismayed and terrified. None dared to face the giant. The hope of an entire nation seemed to shrink in the presence of this one fearsome warrior. The days dragged on, each one filled with the same dread, the same unanswered challenge. Meanwhile, miles away, in the quiet town of Bethlehem, a young shepherd named David was tending his father's sheep. He was the youngest of 8 sons, his days spent under the open sky, his companions the flock he protected. He wasn't a soldier. His hands were skilled with a shepherd's staff and a simple sling, not a sword and shield, but his heart was filled with a deep and unwavering faith in God. One day, David's father, Jesse, called for him. He asked David to take roasted grain and 10 loaves of bread to his 3 oldest brothers, who were serving in King Saul's army. He also sent 10 cheeses for their commander. Jesse was worried and wanted to know how his sons were faring in the standoff against the Philistines. So David rose early the next morning, left the flock with another shepherd, and set off on his journey. When he arrived at the camp, the Israelite army was just heading out to their battle positions, shouting their war cries. But their shouts faded as Goliath emerged once more, repeating his defiant challenge. David saw the Israelite soldiers run in fear, their faces pale. He turned to a soldier standing nearby. "What will be done for the man who kills this Philistine and removes this disgrace from Israel?" he asked. "Who is this uncircumcised Philistine that he should defy the armies of the living God?" The soldiers told him about the reward King Saul had promised: great wealth, his daughter in marriage, and tax exemption for his family. David's oldest brother Eliab overheard him and grew angry. "Why have you come down here?" he scolded. "And with whom did you leave those few sheep in the wilderness? I know how conceited you are and how wicked your heart is. You came down only to watch the battle." But David wasn't discouraged. He replied, "Now what have I done? Can I even speak?" He moved on, asking others the same question, and their answers were the same. David's words, so full of courage and conviction, were soon reported to King Saul, who sent for the young shepherd. When David stood before the king, his voice was steady. "Let no one lose heart on account of this Philistine," he declared. "Your servant will go and fight him." Saul looked at the young man, barely more than a boy, and shook his head. "You are not able to go out against this Philistine and fight him. You are only a young man, and he has been a warrior from his youth." But David's confidence wasn't in his own strength. He explained, "Your servant has been keeping his father's sheep. When a lion or a bear came and carried off a sheep from the flock, I went after it, struck it, and rescued the sheep from its mouth. When it turned on me, I seized it by its hair, struck it, and killed it. Your servant has killed both the lion and the bear. This uncircumcised Philistine will be like one of them, because he has defied the armies of the living God. The Lord who rescued me from the paw of the lion and the paw of the bear will rescue me from the hand of this Philistine." Saul, moved by David's incredible faith, finally agreed. "Go," he said, "and the Lord be with you." Saul then dressed David in his own tunic. He put a coat of armor on him and a bronze helmet on his head. David fastened on his sword over the tunic and tried walking around, but he wasn't used to them. "I cannot go in these," he said to Saul, "because I am not used to them." So he took them off. He was not going to fight this battle as a soldier, but as a shepherd, with the tools he knew and the faith he held. Instead, he took his staff in his hand and walked down to the stream that ran through the valley. He carefully chose 5 smooth stones and placed them in the pouch of his shepherd's bag. With his sling in his hand, he walked out onto the battlefield towards the giant. Goliath saw him come in and was filled with contempt. He looked at the ruddy, handsome boy and saw an insult, not a challenger. "Am I a dog," he bellowed, "that you come at me with sticks?" And he cursed David by his gods. "Come here," he shouted, "and I'll give you flesh to the birds and the wild animals." David's voice rang out across the valley, clear and strong, filled not with fear, but with righteous power. "You come against me with sword and spear and javelin, but I come against you in the name of the Lord Almighty, the God of the armies of Israel, whom you have defeated. This day the Lord will deliver you into my hands, and I'll strike you down and cut off your head. This very day I will give the carcasses of the Philistine army to the birds and the wild animals, and the whole world will know that there is a God in Israel. All those gathered here will know that it is not by sword or spear that the Lord saves, for the battle is the Lord's, and he will give all of you into our hands." As Goliath moved closer to attack him, David ran quickly toward the battle line to meet him. Reaching into his bag, he took out a stone. He placed it in his sling and began to whirl it around his head, faster and faster, a blur of motion. The air whizzed as he released the stone. Time seemed to slow down. The stone flew through the air, a small, smooth projectile on a perfect trajectory. It wasn't just a stone, it was an instrument of faith, guided by a power far greater than any army. It struck the giant squarely on the forehead, sinking deep into his skull. Goliath staggered, his eyes wide with shock. His massive body swayed for a moment, and then he crashed face down on the ground with a thunderous thud that shook the earth. The giant was dead. David ran and stood over him. He pulled Goliath's own massive sword from its sheath and used it to cut off his head. When the Philistines saw that their hero was dead, a wave of panic washed over them. They turned and ran, with the Israelites roaring in victory as they chased after them, pursuing them for miles. That day, a shepherd boy taught a nation and the world a timeless lesson. The story of David and Goliath isn't just about a boy defeating a giant. It's about courage, born from faith. It is a reminder that the size of our challenges does unmatter when we know the size of our God. When we face our fears, not with our own strength, but with a deep and abiding trust in a higher power, the impossible becomes possible. The giants in our own lives, our doubts, our obstacles can be overcome. All it takes is the faith of a shepherd and the courage to pick up a stone. Thanks for watching.